Hello. So this is Nubia of Nubian Queen Nation podcast. So I think just wanted to start off today by saying welcome to the podcast, first of all. And this is not so much going to be a rant. And I would say that I apologize ahead of time, but I'm going to say sorry, not sorry. This is just based on my experience. And this is not even me having a bad day. This is just me living in my skin for more than 50 years plus. I usually don't say my age, but that's as close as I'm going to get to saying my age. Serving my country in the United States Air Force, being a part of Desert Storm. And then there's so many different things that happen to me over there that sometimes there'll be something that will happen. It'll trigger what happened over in Desert Storm. I didn't even know that there was such a word as, honestly, microaggression or all these just different things. Like there was just really no name like that when I was coming through or growing up. So your kids go off to college, my POC kids, which is people of color, persons of color. And then they come back with all these new, upgraded terminology. And, now it makes sense to me. And looking back, I'm thinking, wow, okay, that's what that was. All right, that too, and that too. And, when you grow up in a Christian household, you want to do things godly, Christianly, turn the other cheek. All those things are what we were raised on, And so when people say things or do things, you do have grace. You extend grace to people because you want grace extended to you. But it's a different story when you grow up living in my beautifully melanated skin. People follow you around the store. You go to the restaurant and they may watch you. You could be the most nicely dressed couple in the restaurant, people of color. And somebody else may come in jeans and flip-flops that might not be a POC, a Caucasian person, or any other person other than Black. And instead of watching them, they'll watch you. Like you're going to get up and you're going to steal your meal, or you're going to leave without paying. And we're aware of these things, and I'll say, I can only speak from my household and me growing up, but even in raising my children, they were homeschooled up until 10th grade for my 3 girls. And my son is still continuing to homeschool. He prefers not to go to the regular schooling, public, private, or any sector. I try to sign him up for one of those trade schools so he can learn something by hand to do something with his hands, and he chose not to. And that was right before the pandemic. So I'm just saying, that might have been the Holy Spirit guiding him. But I wasn't going to push him into doing something that he didn't want to do. So it's been real. So like I said, raising my children, we would go into the store when they were younger, and before you get out the store, and I think that a lot of people can tell you that they said people of color would say, when you go in the store, don't just randomly touch things. Don't flail your arms. Don't run around like a little rugrat through the store. Make sure that you're on your best behavior. And I also will say, don't ask me to buy this, that, or whatever. Those were just my rules that we laid down before we even got out the car. And I would say something like, when it's time to leave the store, when it's time to go, it's time to go. That went for playgrounds and everything. When you're on the playground and I say it's time to go, these were when they were really just little tots. When it's time to go, it's time to go. Because majority of the time we would be in a play group and we would be the only family of color, because we also, homeschooled after that. But so I'm not going to have my 3 little girls running around the park and then acting like they're all unruly. When it's time to go, it's time to go. So those are just rules. And even when learning to drive, my parents even taught me, as an African-American person, that if you were to be stopped by a police officer, you put both hands on the steering wheel. Everything is yes, sir, no, sir, or ma'am, whoever stops you. And keep your eyes straight. Don't make any sudden moves. Those are the things that we're taught as teenagers. So I can remember saying that to some of my friends that in the homeschool group, that's what I taught my girls, and definitely my son, who's almost coming of age. those are the things that you do if you're ever stopped by a police officer. Now, thank God we do live in, an area which is not known for some of the gruesome things that have been happening all over the United States and in other countries also. I'll just stick with the United States for now. These are rules and things that have been passed down to us from generations, So, and I'm sure maybe there are other groups of people who their parents specifically teach you that these are the game rules when you go into a restaurant or when you go into a store. People are going to think you're stealing something, so they might follow you around, or this is what you do when you're driving. But, and if so, I really, really would love to hear back your comments, good, bad, whatever. I mean, how did you grow up? Did your parents say that to you, that these are the ground rules? My hope and my prayer is that whoever befriends any of my children, who, like I said, my children or my daughters are in their 20s now, but I would hope that if something ever, pray to God, never happened to my son, that his group of friends who are from not so populated and not really, really, really diverse areas, that they would have his back. Because I have heard stories of, there's lots of stories out there, but one in particular, this lady said that her children who are Caucasian, they all piled into their friend's car, who just happened to be a young black male. And I'm not sure if he was driving the car or if he let one of his friends drive his car, but they got pulled over by the police for whatever reason. And at the time, they were putting all the blame of whatever happened, which was pretty much nothing, on this black gentleman. And they ended up putting him out the car and making him walk home or something outrageous like that. It came from a reliable source. I'm just saying, it is very scary out there to raise a black child, especially a black male. And I also meant to say in the beginning, this is my podcast. And if you're not comfortable with the subject of what I'm saying, then, I've only earned like $9 and something change the whole time I've been doing the podcast, but I do enjoy having a voice, which is very important to me. And the other thing is, if I'm going to lose my 3 subscribers, which is probably my mother, my sister, and maybe one of my children, I don't know. Well, so be it. I'm just speaking my mind, because sometimes it just gets to be a little bit too much to just hold it all in and just keep turning the cheek and turning the cheek and turning the cheek. So on my Desert Storm experience, I was just, I applied for my DD Form 214. So if you're in the military and you're out there, then you understand what the DD Form 214 is. It's basically a form that tells you, this is what I did while I was in the military, and I achieved this award, this, whatever. All your accolades are on this piece of paper, and it gives you the start time, the ending time of when you came in the military, and if you served long-term or short-term overseas. So because of the different things I'm going through with filing paperwork, lack of focus, man, I just cannot stay focused that's the hardest thing. I won't say can't, because for all the Christians out there, I'm a very positive person, but sometimes facts are just facts. So anyway, I got a copy of my DD Form 214 for the 3rd time. Now I did take it, and you can take a copy of your form, and you can put it into the office in the court of your local city, so that they have a safe and secure place for your copy. So my husband probably did that about 30 years ago, or at least 16 years ago when we moved here. And I just now did it like a couple weeks ago. But in getting my DD Form 214, I took a look at it, and I noticed that the time that I served during Desert Storm was not on the line 18. So if you're out there and you just happen to be a military person, please check your form for line 18 on this DD Form 214. And it didn't say anything about Desert Storm. Now, why is it that when I asked for a copy of my form, it didn't come up automatically with the most updated version? That version should have been the one showing my Desert Storm service, but it didn't. And so that just put me kind of in a tailspin. Like, all the triggers went off in me, because I was treated not so good during the Desert Storm situation, where I was in a group of 40 people or whatever, 30, 40, 35. You have to read a chapter that I did in this book, anthology called Weathering the Storm or something the Storm. I shouldn't have the name of my own book, right? But anyway, if you leave me an email or a message, then I can get back with you with the title of that book. I prefer you get it from me. So when I looked at that form, or all the things that happened to me over there, to me, not having the designation of being a part of Desert Storm on my form, that just felt like another slap in the face. Like 32 years later, here I am looking at this form that should have been done. Of course, I came back in denial, had my head in the sand, came home, prepared, started to have children and things like that. So I never really took account of what was on this form, because I won't say that I didn't care, but I tried to move past it and start to, build a new life after Desert Storm, which was having children, having babies, and tending to my husband. So here I am 32 years later, finding out that the information that I needed on that form wasn't on the one that was given to me. And I had nobody to call because it was like on a Friday after 5 p.m. So I finally called around on that Monday, which was yesterday. And everybody was very nice, calling the Air Force Base where I used to be assigned, and looking for that reserve unit. And then they gave me another number, which I finally got in my car after my 2 VA appointments, and I drove directly to my state representative in my New England state. And they were very helpful there too. So I believe that it's going to help things to move along quickly. And I do know now, whether it's been amended or whatever, I finally did see a copy of my DD Form 214 that said that I served during that time. So my main thing is that there's so many different things that go on in a day that just trigger you. Some things set me back to Desert Storm, and some things set me back to childhood. I can remember, like I said, growing up in my little New England town and calling up for my very first job when I was like 16 or so. And the person was very, very professional and polite on the phone, and scheduled a time for the interview, went down there, drove my little car, parked in front, whatever, in the building. And when I walked in, she saw that I was African-American, because on the phone at the time, I guess she couldn't tell that I was African-American. And she told me that the position had already been taken, had been taken. That was my first time saying, you know what? I have to believe what she says, because that's what she's saying. But I believe it was because I showed up and she saw that my skin was brown, and she decided not to give me the job. And so there's just been different things over my lifetime that have happened, and you just don't talk about it. You just kind of, all right, this is what my life is like being Black in America. And I'm at the point right now where I'm just I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And when you say that you live in a community, okay, so turning to church for a second, there's such a thing as church hurt. Well, you send your children off to colleges and things like that. And like I said, they come back with different terminologies. And the other day, one of my children said, there's such a thing. Well, she said white hurt. So there's church hurt, and then there's white hurt, which there's so many things that could have been avoided. But because the person, their skin color, they feel like they can say and do whatever they want to say. Now, I'm not putting everybody in this pool. I'm not, not everybody's the same. Everybody, every nationality, every ethnicity has their good and has their bad. But there is a real thing. Those two things are real things. You can go into a church and you can experience church hurt. I have experienced that myself. Black church, white church, you name it. And it does take time to get over those things. And I think half of the disbelief is that you can be, you're like, I'm in a church environment. I'm amongst Christians. What happened to brotherly love? What happened to treating other people the way you would like to be treated? So hearing any of my children express any type of church hurt or white hurt, trying to fit in, whether it's having your natural curly hair blow dried, that process takes, oh my gosh, it can take almost 5 hours if you're doing it yourself to just blow dry your own hair. You got to wash it and make sure it's very, very clean. And then you got to put a light kind of oil on it. And either whether you're pressing it straight with a hot comb that you sit on the stove, or you are taking that blow dryer, or now they have the other gadgets to make your hair extremely straight. That stuff is drying to your hair. That's not natural. So doing those things, and I even had some cousins, second, third cousins, whatever, it doesn't really matter, that would not let their brown skinned children go outside to play because they didn't want them to get a tan line. Let that sink in for a minute. I also heard that the same thing when I was stationed over in Desert Storm in Saudi Arabia. The parents, when you're a teenage girl, whatever, you get to a certain age, you wear an abaya. So you wear something that covers your head and covers your whole body, black. Or maybe it's different colors too, but I just remember it being black in Saudi Arabia. And they did not want their children to have tan lines. Now, for whatever reason, their melanin, the melanated skin, of course, I embrace my melanated skin, but not everybody does. And not every country does. So it's a real thing. So just hearing, like I said, I think of Meghan Merkel. Is that her name? She's married to, Prince Harry. So if you're watching me, this is my podcast, but I also have it, I'm recording it also on YouTube, which is Nubian Queen 04, and I'm holding up the book Spare. So I read this book, it was on Audible, and no, I'm not getting paid to say that, but it was on Audible. So I listened to it and I did have the book. And he talked about what it felt like to be the Spare. And I tell you what, I have so much more respect for him after reading and listening to this book, and him doing everything in his power not to let his wife be harmed or have to go through some of the things that his mom went through being Prince Harry. And we're talking about, Princess Diana. And some of the things I can just imagine when I'm reading the book, that Meghan Merkel, every time you see her hair is nicely, blow dried, and you never see her in its curly state or its natural state. I'm sure that she does have naturally curly hair, but it's more palatable for other people to see you with your straight hair. And then, maybe wearing a shade lighter for your foundation, or wearing powder that's one shade lighter, just because you want to fit in. Or, some of the things that I've heard, whether it was my children or children of other friends or whomever, where they just did some things just to fit in, like, not being their unapologetically melanated, beautiful, brown skinned people that they are. And sometimes other people say, well, you'll be more attractive if you do this, or you'll be more attractive if you do that. And what a shame. I hope that we're not raising our children that way. We should be accepted just the way that we are. And if I hear of anybody whose heart is hurting because of church hurt, or this, my hands are in air quote, white hurt, where you live in a community and you may be the only minority in a community of all Caucasians or whatever, or you could even be whatever, Asian American, whatever your ethnicity is. There are some very hurtful things that people say, and then they don't even mean it. Or even if you go up to your brown skinned person and you put your light skin up against them and saying, oh, look, I'm almost to your tan as far as summertime. Those things, guys, that's not always funny. Unless you went to know a person from kindergarten and you've known them all your life, some things are just not appropriate. Like today, I went to my art class and I was kind of in a hurry. I usually wear head covering because that's just what I do, because I really do feel that my hair is, I won't even say that it's my whatever power, but I know that there's a scripture in the Bible that says your hair is your, it's very important. I can't think of the exact word that I'm looking for as far as that scripture on here. But for somebody to just walk up to me and put their hands in my hair, like, do you know how, that's a microaggression. That is just plain old. I don't even know where your hands have been. I don't want your hands in my hair or touching my hair. Ask. And if you ask nowadays, I might say yes, but majority of the time I won't say no. Because if I were to just walk up to you and put my hands in your blonde hair or whatever the color of your hair is, how offensive is that? So just in case you don't know that that's offensive, I'm telling you that it is. It's offensive. Don't do that. And I won't say that it's funny, but on my way to my class, because I was in a rush and I didn't cover my hair today. By the way, I do have, for my podcast listeners, I do have sister locks. And, when people see me with my hair covered, you may think of it as me being lazy, but no, I am actually protecting my hair. Like if I go to the doctor's office, I don't know. Yes, they do change the covering, the seating, and you have to put your head back. I think of getting on an airplane and touching my hair to the back of the seat or any of those things. That's just a nasty thought to me. So whenever I go places, I do like to have my hair covered. And there's a reason why nurses in them cover their hair, whether it was definitely way before COVID. So I went to my art class, didn't have my hair covered, and people feel comfortable enough with me. Well, thank God for that. But to just put your hands in my hair because it's your first time seeing it, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. And I was thinking, I should just paint because I'm learning how to draw and paint. That I should do a painting, and on the bottom of the painting, I would have a sister with sister locks or something like that, or just hair, and say, don't toucheth the hair of a Black woman. Especially if you haven't asked, and especially if you don't know the person. But people just feel like it's a new thing. I understand, and maybe, your hair's not going to look the same way if you put it in sister locks, or your hair's not going to look the same way if you cornroll it or whatever. But I'm just saying, don't do it, please. Don't. So, going back to community, people think that, okay, we're in a community. But if I'm in a community of people who don't look like me, and you only invite me on to maybe a this or that, it's really not community. And I'm not saying that I have to be involved in everything that you do, but don't say, oh, my community or my church or my this is diverse. When if you only have 3 Black families that are in your church, that's not diversity. If you don't have anybody on your leadership and they're not a POC, that's not diversity. If a person goes to your website and there's no people of color, like really people of color, not like you tried really hard, that's not diversity. So these are all these things that I don't know. If you don't hear from, do you read a book? How do you pick up a book and say, oh, this is how you diversify, or this is how you're truly like if you have never had a person in a leadership position at your job for more than, oh, this is the first Black person we've ever had as a vice president of this company, or this is the first time we've ever had an executive over this account at this bank or at this whatever. How many are you really diverse? And then when you are holding that position or that title, other people look at you, people who are not of color, and they even ask my children. One of my daughters was, whatever her subject was in college, they said, oh, you're only here because of a program that, I'm forgetting all the names of these things because, that's just my brain fog. But not reparations is another word that I'm thinking of. But you're only here because affirmative action. You're only here because of affirmative action, because they had to fulfill that quota. Do you know what that feels like to be a person of color and you earned your grades, you earned a scholarship, and somebody tells you that you're only allowed in this class probably because of affirmative action? Did you not know that affirmative action actually, white women hold more of the positions of affirmative action than actually Black women or Black men? Those positions, there's a small percentage of African Americans who actually hold down the title of affirmative action. It's being held up by plenty of other people of other ethnicities, especially females. So we need to watch out what we say when we say things to people, because we think that, oh, that's it, or even saying things in jest and we think that it's funny. I'm just letting you know right now, it's not funny. If you're going to be a community, really be a community. Don't be selective as to, oh, well, we can invite her to this, but we shouldn't invite her to this. Or she may be, I don't know what the if, ands, buts, the druthers or whatever, but if you're really going to be a friend to somebody, or you really want to rally around somebody and be a community, be a community. So I guess the other thing that I wanted to say before ending this is I think I have my other daughter's permission to say this, but it doesn't really matter because I'm sure if it's happened to one of my daughters, it's happened to other people out there too, where we have all of us come in a rainbow of colors. In the Black community, we have light-skinned Black people, we have medium, dark, we have a plethora of colors of brown, beautiful browns. So I happen to be African American descent, and my husband's from Jamaica. So my children fall somewhere in between there, closer to, you would think that my husband would be a dark-skinned Jamaican, but he's not, he's light-skinned. And so my kids they get approached, people think that they're maybe from Puerto Rico or they're from something other than being a Black American. And my daughter went to school in upstate, I'll just say New England. I won't say the school. And she took every Africana studies and Africana literature and Africana everything. She's just trying to like find herself, find her place as a light-skinned African-American / Jamaican. And she said, Mommy, she would call me and say, I haven't made friends yet. I'm like, sweetheart, just hang in there. Just keep smiling, keep just being yourself. Just, put your best foot forward. Just be yourself. It's going to happen. And I think, days went by, maybe even a couple more weeks went by. And finally, she said that this one day she went to school. I'm not sure if she was running late, but she purposely put on a headscarf. She, put her hair up and had this beautiful scarf on her head. And she was walking to class. And she said, as she got to the doorway of her class, 2 other female, Black females were standing in the doorway at the same time as her. And they all looked at each other and they kind of give each other this head nod, but you kind of take your chin and you go up, which is like you saying hello without saying hello. But it's like, yeah, I see you. And she was so excited after class that she called me. She says, Mommy, I got a head nod. And I was like, yes, girl, you did it. You in. And so with her identifying and finding herself, she comes home for a weekend, which about 2 hours from where her school was. And she had her scarf on. And so we decided to go to the church that we were attending at that time. And these people that I love them all, still love them to this day. Don't see them as often as I used to before the pandemic, but I still love them dearly. And they know all my children since they were little. So one of my friends said, oh my gosh, your daughter looked like an Aunt Jemima with that scarf on her head. I said, what? Like, what? Like, and I know it was said in love, but do you not know that the history of wearing a headscarf was because back during slavery time, Black women could do so many different things. First of all, we didn't have time to take care of our hair during slavery time, but there was so many different things that we could do to our hair. They actually made some kind of amendment or some kind of court document that said that Black women had to cover their hair because it was offensive to white women because Black women were getting too much attention for their hair. Again, this is not a hate video, guys. Okay. You can Google any of this information. Google Black women in headscarves going back to slavery time. And even before that, if I have seen anybody during Jesus' time in the Bible, if they do any kind of depiction, women always had their head covered. And even African to this day, Haiti, whatever country they come from, a lot of them wear their hair's covered, their head covered. So to have a friend of mine say that, I was like, especially not at that time, I did not repeat it to my daughter because she was already trying to find a sense of self. And in that same day, another one of my friends, also in the same service, told my daughter that with your hair all the way up like that and that scarf on your head, I can't see past your head to hear the nothing to do with your ears, but the message. And I was like, if you only knew that my daughter has been crying and she's been trying to identify and find her place in this world. So she told her daughter, you need to move your head. I can't see. My daughter said, you need to lean to the left. And so when my daughter told me that, that's what she said. At first, I was a little bit embarrassed. And then I said, you know what? More power to you. Like, more power to you. Like, you know what? She said what she said. So, like I said, if it's just the 3 people that are in my audience listening to this, great. And if it's more of you that are listening to it, just, I don't know, pass this message on to a friend of a friend and just say, these are just some things that you just don't do and just don't say because it's not funny. It goes deep. And sometimes if you're growing up in an all white community, you can have your kids be 27, 30 years old, and they finally look back and say, wow, I really did experience a lot of white hurt. So I think those are just some of the things that I just wanted to make sure that I got off my chest. And like I said, this is not everybody's story. There's a lot of people that are out there, and this is not even to say that we had a bad life. I've experienced a lot of that. I was telling, okay, yeah, I am in therapy. Yeah, I need therapy. The military, a lot of things happened during Desert Storm that I kind of swept under the carpet. And then during Desert Storm, I had a friend that I respect highly who said that even therapists need therapists. And for some reason, that unlocked the gate for me, because in the Black community, when I was growing up, you didn't go and see a therapist. You just took that stuff to the altar and you gave it to Jesus. Okay. But I do remember my pastor in Tampa saying that, where's my thought going? Help me, Lord. I don't remember where I was going. I have to remind myself to go there. That it's good to talk when you're in therapy. It's good to give stuff to Jesus, but every once in a while, you need to talk to somebody with some skin wrapped around them, an earthly being. So there's nothing wrong with getting a counselor or seeing a therapist. So again, but the one thing that does make me very excited, and is America changing? I'm not sure. We have a long ways to go. We've come a long ways, but we still have a long, long ways to go. So recently I've seen the movie, and if you haven't seen these movies, go and look them up. Queen Charlotte. I absolutely loved watching the movie, and not so much because of, it's nice to watch the queen but to see her in her element, and then that she was depicted as a person of color. We don't know what these exact percentages of anybody actually, but the fact that they showed her as a woman of color, that just blessed my soul. I just have to say. And there were fans of Bridgerton that I read different comments. They said, well, I'm a fan of Bridgerton, but I'm not watching anything that has to do with a woman of color, Queen Charlotte. Well, you know what? That's your loss. What's wrong with expanding your mind? And then the other thing that I saw was Cleopatra. Now, I have always loved Cleopatra and her story. And of course, I had the version of Cleopatra with the Elizabeth Taylor version. And I've watched it, I can't even tell you how many times, more than 10 times with my girls when they were growing up. We just loved the whole queenly portion of watching Cleopatra. But knowing that this is, a touchy thing here. If you grow up in Africa, if you grow up in Egypt, your skin is probably going to be more melanated than an Elizabeth Taylor. Just, what's that called? Rumor alert? I don't know. That's just the tea. Even if they call it Middle Eastern, whatever they call it, it's still a part of Africa, people. I mean, the canal was man-made. Okay, that wasn't done by it was once one full continent where it was connected. Rumor alert. Okay, so there's a very good chance that Cleopatra also could have been a woman of color. Yes, she might have been mixed with this and that. And some people say, does it matter? Well, when the person of character that we're speaking about, when it's white, it doesn't matter. But or it is what it is. But when all of a sudden the person is a person of color, now, you know what? Color doesn't matter. Well, really? Well, then why is it throughout the whole Bible when you read things and you look up different stories, a lot of things, excuse me for a second, has been whitewashed. It's been whitewashed. Okay. There are different paintings that they say they're even in the, in the basement of the Pope's temple, castle, wherever he lives, that depicts a lot of pictures that were supposed to be melanated people are not. They're white. They're whitewashed. So it's not that they didn't have brown paint. They just chose to change the color on a lot of these different people. And history is telling it. The Bible says that everything that's hidden shall be revealed. So there we have it. So I really enjoyed watching Cleopatra. I enjoyed watching Queen Charlotte. And then, oh my goodness, there's a movie that's coming out with the mermaid from Disney, and they cast her as a colored woman. Oh my goodness. Do you know the uproar of what's going on in this world, this America, when Disney casts one of their characters as a Black person, a person of color? Just like they did that one version of the Last Princess. Actually, that version could have been a little bit better. There's a lot of hokey pokey, witchcrafty things going on in that one version of that one Black princess. But America, it goes crazy when somebody is cast as a Black character, and Mermaid is not even a true story, and that just made people flip out and just lose their mind. But did we do the same thing when Cleopatra was cast as Elizabeth Taylor? No, it's just been like that. That's how America rolls. They won't even put an Indian, a Native American, in as a Native American, or when they had black people as actors in blackface. That's what they did. So now we're at a point in life where we're like, you know what? Stop whitewashing things. History is history. And if it really doesn't matter, and even a lot of the characters in the Bible, if it really didn't matter, then why would they go through such lengths to say this person came from this tribe, this person came from that tribe? I don't think that it's not an accident that the Lord said that this is a Canaanite, this is a Hittite. It placed a person in a certain region at a certain time. I just think that we just need to be a little bit more open-minded. And, I'm not asking people to bow down when they see me come in with my melanated self. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying there's usually a white elephant, Black elephant, whatever, a kind of elephant in the room. There are certain subjects that we just don't want to talk about. And, since George Floyd, and even then before, but more so now, you need to talk about the elephant in the room. You need to talk about the elephant in the room. I think that there should be more peer groups where you can talk about these things in a safe environment, not just POCs talking to POCs and white people talking to white people and Asian people talking to Asian people. There should be a room collectively where people can come together and talk about these different things, because we are different. We like different things. We eat different foods. We like eating foods with spice. And I'm just saying that, we don't just eat this or that. We like to try, and especially my family, we like to try. We have favorite dishes from every different ethnicity. That's what America's about, right? Diversity. So I don't know. A lot of things, I guess, did spark this conversation, even though I've been holding back because I just didn't want to be offensive or rub people the wrong way. But I'm like, you know what? It's a topic of conversation. If you can't come and talk to somebody safely and without raising your voice and giving people space to be themselves, then what can you? So the other thing that also said, let me just do this podcast today, was my son is in a league of young boys that get together and they race cars online. And the reporter came in. So if you're watching me on YouTube, he was there for about an hour and a half, I don't know, maybe 2 hours, taking pictures, and also wrote an article. And I think there might have been 5 boys there at the time. My son's been going since last year sometime around the holidays. And him and one other boy were really, really frequent. And then the other 2 came after. And some people have come and gone. So if you have a room of 5 young men, my son is actually the oldest one there, handsome young man, I might add, and he's 16, homeschooled. Right around the time that the article was written, which was about 3 weeks ago, a very sad and devastating situation happened here with a young girl who's like 17. She died at the hands of a boyfriend, something like that. Very sad. And so if something like that happens in your community and you haven't really had anything good happen in your community when it comes to a certain community, why couldn't the article have just, and I'm not saying that my son had to be on the front page, but if you have 5 or 4 people in the room at that one time, do all 3 of the boys that are on the cover have to be Caucasian? Like you couldn't put my son on the front page. I'm just saying, doing a good thing, homeschool boy. I don't understand America. Who was in the room when you make those decisions? I mean, I can't be on every single panel. I just don't understand. I don't understand. And it's a good article. Read it if you're in my local area or even online. I'll just hold it up so you have to go to the YouTube to see it. That almost puts you exactly where I am as far as where I live. But that kind of stuff just, like I said, we turn the cheek, and we turn the cheek. Sometimes you really just get tired. I think the other thing I was going to say, when I was little, because I had to write stuff down, write myself notes. I can remember, because my father is African American, but he was born in Portland, Maine. And we would spend summers there. We would go back and forth from my little New England town to Portland, Maine. I think my father's father at that time was ill in the hospital, so we went often to see him. My father went often to see him. So I remember one of my cousins signing me up we were at a day camp or something like that. I guess it might have been on the weekend. Had to be on the weekend because we went to school. We never really missed school. And during break at this camp or day camp, a little white boy was sitting beside me, and he looked over at me. Might have been, maybe I was 10 or 11. I really don't know. No more than 11, maybe 9, 10. I don't know. And he looked over at me, and we're just sitting there, taking a breath from whatever, breather, a rest. And he said to me, "Were your parents slaves?" Now I'm 10, just like him. He's 10 too, probably. And I was like, what kind of question is that? I grew up, this had to be like in the 70s. And I'm like, well, my parents slaves? I'm like, and instead of getting mad or angry or being rude, because again, I wasn't raised that way, I said to him, no, were yours? And he looked at me like the most dumbfounded look on his face. And I was like, my parents were slaves, were yours? I mean, we're talking a couple generations out, and I don't even know how far back I can go with my history to tell you where people were even from. So I just think that we need to do better at educating our children. And the other thing too is I signed up to be a tour guide for my local area. So they call it a docent. So it was like Docent Academy. And we are wrapping up our 10-week course. And at the end, this one building had a beautiful, beautiful, let's see here. What's the word I want to say? Just beautiful pictures and things of the Amistad. So it showed I want to say, don't quote me please, the 42, 43, however, 23, I don't know, however many people were on the Amistad. Somebody had drawn paintings, portraits of them. And so they had that, they had different chains and different things about slavery and the ship on display. And the one lady who was giving us the history of this museum said that days before or a week before we came through, a tour of third graders came through. And people would come from all over the state and to come to this place for a tour of the Amistad. I think that they have more of the Amistad artifacts there than other places. And she said that one of the ladies leaned over to her, just happened to be a Caucasian lady, and said to her, "Let the kids walk through the Amistad Museum, but don't tell them the history." And she was also white, Caucasian, and she said she thought to herself, "Well, that's an odd request because the kids are at the museum to learn history." And she thought, well, this must be a teacher or a person of authority. I'll just take her word on it because things are hustling and bustling going through this museum. So she went on about her business, and then it kept striking a chord with her. So she decided to, well, after the tour, she told us about it. She said, "This is what happened." The lady said, don't give them the history of this tour. Go ahead and just let them walk through. So when she said that to us, and I was sitting in the room, I'm like, no, you either need to contact the school and find out who this lady was, or you need to write an article in the paper. Like, why do you can't keep hiding history from our children. Facts are facts. And America's facts, it's not pretty. It is pretty ugly. But you can't keep hiding our children from the ugly, disgusting things that happened during slavery. So after, had a conversation with her, I think she kind of mentioned to a couple of other few people, and it prompted her to call the school. And the principal said, or whomever was in the administrative office said, "No, that wasn't any of our teachers. That was probably just one of the mothers." Now, can you imagine? That doesn't make any sense, people. You can't keep hiding our children from the dirty, ugly facts of what America was built on. And again, you know what? I serve my country. I have a right to say what I'm going to say, or what I'm saying. And so whenever you start to say the not so good parts about America, then people think that you're a traitor or that you're whatever. No, life is life. Okay. And I've been living it very well. Okay. So I just thought that's just horrible. And so I guess that they kind of working on rectifying that. Maybe hopefully they'll bring the kids back for another tour or whatever. But these things are happening all around us, and a lot of times we don't even know. I think my thing was, I grew up in an area which was very diverse. But I lived in Virginia for a while, and my kids went to a private school. And it's important for you to make sure that I tried really hard to make sure that my children were in a group that either somebody else looked like them other than their siblings, whether it was brownies or whether it was gymnastics class or whatever. But a lot of times we were in circles where there weren't very many people of color in our circle because of where I lived. But if you are a person that's of a different ethnicity, it would be nice for you to make sure also, just for diversity, it's not going away. We're a melting pot, that your children have a Black friend, or that your children have an Asian friend, or whatever. And maybe that seems like it's not organic. You want it to happen organically, but sometimes you live in an area and it's not going to happen that way unless you make it happen that way. Whether it's, I don't know, I can't come up with different ways of how you can make your children blend in with other children. But I tell you what, where I lived in that little country town, when some of those kids left that little country town and left for college and bumped into a lot of African Americans or people who didn't look like them, I'm sure that they had a rude awakening also. So anyway, I'm 48 minutes now into this podcast, and I'm hoping that it didn't just sound like rambling, but that there was something that you can actually take away with, So, and if you haven't seen, like I said, Cleopatra, go and take a look at it with an open mind. Go and watch Queen Charlotte with an open mind. And then there's a new movie also that's coming out. And I hate to refer to this gentleman as the Black Mozart, because he actually was said to have been 10 years or more older than Mozart and might have even influenced him. But they're saying that he's a person of color, and he is, I don't speak French, but Les Chevaliers des Saints. And that should be coming out in a theater near you. No, I'm not getting paid for any of these sponsor things. But the other two were on Netflix, and this one should probably be in a theater. So that was a mouthful. And again, I do love all people, but it is what it is. I did not quote the pastor, one of the pastors that I grew up with very well when she says that. But Anyway, hopefully you found something of value in this 50-minute rant. But I was calm, so I guess we can't call it a rant. Anyway, I appreciate you. Thank you for all my listeners who are all over the world, not just in America, not just in New England, but all over. I thank you. I appreciate you. And come back and visit us again. All right. Peace and blessings for now. Ciao. And thank you for watching on YouTube. All right. That's it for now. This is Nubia of Nubian Queen Nation Podcast. Out.